Hey guys, Tori here. So, I mentioned earlier this year, or this December, that I was working on 2 December dailies this year, and I've mostly just been showing you the one, so I think it's time for me to get started on my 2nd December daily, which, by the way, I am using the Heidi Swapp Memorydex for this December daily. So, the other December daily that I'm working on, this one, is a 6x8 album documenting my December 2017. I really wanted to make a Memorydex this year, and so I thought it would be fun to do 2 December dailies. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. And one of them can be a December daily Christmas pasts, basically. And the plan is that I will fill it with stories from my childhood Christmases or Christmases past, because I don't have those documented. My mom didn't document them, and if I don't tell the story, who will? So anyways, here's the plan. I got this really gorgeous Memorydex stand from Heidi Swapp, and hopefully you can kind of see this on the camera. It's got these really beautiful like knobs, and it's white, so I think it'll look really cute for December daily. I also picked up the punch, so that I'll be able to punch cards so they go on. And if you don't know what a Memorydex is, it's kind of like one of those vintage Filodex? Memorydex? Is that what they're called? And what you can do is you can take cards and you can punch holes in them just like this, and then they kind of just pop on there just like so. And you can pop all the cards on there, and you can actually stick a ton on here because it's quite big, and then you would spin it and you'd get to see all the cards. Now obviously there's not enough cards on here for it to really spin, but that gives you kind of the idea. And I had these I found these at a thrift store actually. They are the months of the year from Heidi Swapp with gold foil. And so obviously the only one that really applies is the December one, but the rest of them I thought, oh, I'll just easily cover up that piece there with the month, and they'll be perfect to go on here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do this project in stages, and I'll bring you guys along. It won't be like I work on one day at a time. I'm going to probably work on a few things at a time. So the first thing I want to do is get a whole bunch of cards in the size that I need, cut out and punched so that they're ready to go in, and I'll probably put them all on there. And that way I can kind of start decorating, but I'll already have a bunch of cards that are ready to go. So the December one I know I'll use just as it is, so I'm going to stick it on there. The other ones, I'm not going to use them as they are. I'm going to have to cover up the month. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick them on the Memorydex just to kind of save them, and then I'll definitely use them. I can either cut that off or cover it up or whatever. And then the exciting thing is that gives me 12 cards that are pre-done. And then I also have the punch here, which will help. So I'm hoping that I can come up with 25 stories. I started jotting down some titles of some stories that I might use. But if I don't come up with 25, that is okay. My thought is that this would be one of those kind of projects that I can continually add to until it's kind of full and I've got all the stories that I want to tell on there. So that's kind of my thought process. So I've got those 12 on there. And then the other really fun thing about the Memorydex punch is that you can actually punch cards and they can go right on there. So I'll show you an example. You can use 3x4 cards. The height is just under 4, so but a 3x4 card will, I think, be just fine. So you can find one that you're like, oh, I love this sentiment. I want to include it in there, whatever it is. So I've got a whole bunch of different ones in here, and you can kind of punch them and be like, okay, this is what I want to include. So let's see, just find one that's inspiring me that I think might work. I mean, obviously, as I'm going through and telling stories and stuff, I might add even more of these. My thought process would be that I would split up each story with a decorative card. And then I would throw in some journaling cards with quotes and things like that in there as well, just for fun. And I was hoping to kind of go with a vintage vibe, but you know what? In the end, I decided, you know what? I'm not gonna like put any restraint on myself. I mean, maybe I should, but I'm not gonna put any restraint on myself. I'm just gonna go with all the colors and all the cards and all the things that make me happy. If there's something that I like, if there's something that looks good, I am gonna go for it. I'm gonna punch it and stick it in, and it's gonna happen. So here's one card. This one, I want to say, is from Ali Edwards' site. It just says favorite moments there, and then on the other side, it's got song lyrics. So I'm going to use the Heidi Swap punch. I'm just going to kind of line it up in there, and you want to kind of make it so it's semi-centered. And to kind of hold it like so I can really punch it, and then it punches the little notches for me, and I can just kind of stick this right in there, and then I can add my journaling or sentiments or whatever on there after. Just see if there's any other cards that are particularly inspiring me. And you can punch them like long ways 3x4, but you could also punch them vertically? No, horizontally. So let's say I really like this Jolly card with the gold foil. I can actually stick it in there this way. And so some of the cards can be vertical and some of them can be horizontal. And I'm going to move them around at a later date. I think for now I'm just going to stick a bunch in there, and it's kind of like the thought that, you know, when you're working on a project, if there's a blank page, it's kind of stressful. But if you have some, like, something on the page, just something, and it doesn't need to be anything crazy, but if you just have one thing on there, it takes off the stress of it being a blank page. Does that make any sense? I don't know if that's just me. So my thought process is, if I can get a bunch of cards punched and kind of already in there, it'll make it easier for me when I want to actually go about starting, because I won't be starting from scratch. I'll already have some kind of things in there, and it'll just make it like easier when it's time to, I don't know, get started. So that's the thought process. So I'm wondering, have you guys ever done a Memorydex for December Daily or other? Have you heard of Memorydex before? Honestly, before I decided to do this, I had like never really heard of Memorydex before. Like, this was like the first time that I had ever heard of Memorydex. So I actually love it. I think it's super fun. I know that Paige Evans did a Memorydex for December Daily a few years ago. It was really cool. So I actually know that one of the stories I want to tell is a story about Christmas sweaters that I used to get as a kid. So I feel like this journaling card with a sweater will be the perfect card for that story. Could also do that sweater weather one, but I think that one's fine. This is a good way to use up some of your stash if you have a ton of cards. Like if you are doing December Daily and you've got more cards than you're actually going to need for your December Daily. Or if you have some cards that you really like, but they don't necessarily coordinate with the style you're going with in your December Daily, then using them in a Memorydex is kind of fun. Like, I love this gold foil deer, but I don't think I'll have an opportunity to use a horizontal 3x4 card in my December Daily, but I can definitely use a horizontal 3x4 card in my Memorydex, and it'll coordinate with the other gold items that I've stuck in there. Yeah, or like I could say, oh, I love this card that says love, peace, joy, but I know that I'm not using green, for example, in my December Daily, so then maybe it's a good idea to punch it and stick it in there. I am using green. It's not that I'm not, so. Okay, I think that's a good start for the 3x4s. And then I also have some 4x6 cards that I already knew there were a couple that I really wanted to include because they go with a story that I already have in my mind. Like this music note actually matches that other music note paper that I stuck in there, this one, and I know that it's not really the right vibe for my December Daily. So this is not necessarily the right size, so I'm going to have to trim it down. So just going to put any of the cards that I'm thinking I might want to include off to the side, and then I can trim them down and add them in a little bit. Oh, this card here. So this card came from the December Daily card pack, one of them. And it just says, our hearts grow tender with childhood memories and love of kindred, and we are better throughout the year for having in spirit become a child again at Christmas time. And I just love that quote, and I feel like it would be perfect to stick in my Memorydex. So actually when I pulled it out, I was like, that's going in the Memorydex because it's so cute. So, oh, and you can definitely stick in like acetate pieces and things like that in your Memorydex too. So honestly, I think the possibilities are endless. Like, you can stick all these fun cards in there. And then if you have a card like this that you've had to cut down for some reason and it's too small for a 4x6 card in your 6x8 pocket, but it could be a good fit for your Memorydex. So, also it's like a perfect way to use up scraps, which if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I love using my scraps. It's like my mission to scrap my scraps. So finding creative ways to use them in my projects is always a win. So in terms of sizes, I'm going to use one of these month cards to kind of get the right sizing for these. So they're about as wide as the cards can be. So they are 4 inches wide, and then they're about as tall as they can be, and they're about 3 3/4. But I've realized that you can't have a card that goes 4. So about 4x4 is about the maximum size that you can get on the Memorydex. So I have a few cards here. I'm going to trim them down so that they fit. And because they are 6 inches wide, I just need to trim off 1 inch on either side, or 2 inches total. And then just make sure that they're not any wider than 4, but they wouldn't be because they're 4x6. Use the punch, and there you go. Got a card for my Memorydex. It's actually like quite easy to add these items. I'm kind of excited for how much you can stick on here. Like, look, I've got all these cards on here already, and it's not even like an eighth full. And there's tons of cards, which is really great because I plan on writing out my stories for these Christmas past stories, basically. And I have a feeling that some of them are going to take up multiple cards, which will be totally fine because I can stick multiple cards in here and they'll fit just fine. Okay. And then any of these pieces that you want to use, you can totally stick them in there too. That's totally fine. I'm going to actually save them in my scrap pile, and when I'm decorating the cards, I'll use these as elements, and they will coordinate perfectly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make some more cards, and the way that I'm going to make more cards is by taking some of the papers that I pulled out for my December daily this year, and I'm going to cut them down. So all of the papers are 12 by 12, and my thought process is the albums are 6 by 8. So if I cut this into a 6 by 12 piece, I will have enough for, let me show you. I'll just do one and then I'll make a bunch and come back and show you. But anyways, my thought process is the widest I'm going to need for my December daily album, for the 6 by 8 album, is 6 by 8. So what I can do is trim down a paper so it's 6 by 8. So that way if I decided that I wanted a gingham, a full sheet gingham, then I can have one piece that is 6 by 8. So it'll be the right size. And then I'll have this piece, which is 4 by 6. So I have a full sheet, I have a 4 by 6 card, and then I've got this big piece here, which I can make a couple of 4 by 4 pieces. Just trim that off. And then I'll make 2 4 by 4, or I guess I'll make 3 4 by 4 cards. Bum, bum, bum. And then I can punch holes in them. I think I might be able to do a couple at the same time. Might be a little more difficult, but yeah, it doesn't want to do more than one at a time. That's okay. Just do one at a time, so as to not screw up your Heidi Swap punch. Punch it and stick it on. So I'm going to do that for some of the other papers that I think might go well with my Memorydex. And I'll skip ahead and then I'll show you when I'm done what I've come up with. So I went through and I cut down all those papers and stuck them in. I also grabbed some vintage book pages and punched them. And then I grabbed my 6 by 6 paper pads and cut some papers down from there. So there's a lot of papers on here. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through the die cuts that I have and see if there's any that I can kind of punch and use. Some of them I know I won't use in my December daily just because of the size or what they are. For example, this Happy Holidays one I probably wouldn't use. This 5x5, Merry and Bright. So I'm going to just punch those and stick them on just for fun. There's also some snowflakes that are super big that I don't think will make it in my December daily. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to punch them and stick them in here because I think it'll be really fun to have all these random size pieces in the Rolodex, Memorydex thingamabobber. Like, look at this, snowmen and deer. Those are super cute. So I'm going to punch those and stick those in. There's a gingerbread house. I don't know. I think this is just a fun way to get things in there that might not actually get into my December daily. And I mean, I've got enough embellishments that even if I was like, oh no, I wish I had a gingerbread house, there's other gingerbread houses. So, and then some things I have two of, like I have two of these wreaths. So one of them can go in the December daily and one of them can go into the Memorydex. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that. I also have a bunch of tags, so I'm gonna punch some of those and stick them in there too. So I'll start working on that and then I'll come back after I've done a bunch. Okay, so I added a bunch of die cuts too. So it's pretty full, but there's still like tons of space. And I'll just kind of show you what it looks like. There's tags and die cuts and papers of different sizes. I might add tabs to some of these later or as I start crafting. But this way I'm all ready to go to add my photos and my stories. And I have vintage storybooks in here and die cuts and all the different papers and everything. And they're in no particular order right now. They're kind of just on there. Kind of whatever I was doing. If I was punching it, it went on. And I love it. There's something about, like, this is totally the scrapbooker in me, but there's something about just having a whole Rolodex of just pretty papers and die cuts that just makes me exceedingly happy. Like, honestly, does it get any happier than just pretty foiled papers and die cuts and glitter? And look at this. This gorgeous gold piece of sparkly paper. It's just so pretty. And then with it, like, random die cuts and you can pull them off easily, flip them around if you want them to go in a different direction. There's some vellum pieces in here and vintage book pages, Frosty the Snowman, tags, some of the Home for the Holidays collection I co-designed, some more vellum. Also threw in some acetates in here. Let's see if I can find one. Here. Just kind of fun too. It just adds like a really fun effect, as well as those journaling cards that I cut down earlier. So there you go. That is step one in my Christmas past December daily that I am working on. And in my next video, I'll make some cards with you. See you then. Bye.